As Turkey, we sincerely support the efforts in this struggle and fulfill our obligations, even though we have an almost negligible historical responsibility at this point. In the recent past, we hosted the Conference of the Parties to the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification. We have conducted fruitful cooperation with many regions and countries, especially in Africa. We also undertook to host the 16th Conference of the Parties to the Convention on Biological Diversity to be held in 2022. And now I want to draw your attention to a problem that threatens humanity, but for some reason is considered invisible. Racism, xenophobia, Islamophobia, and hate speech have reached an alarming level. In the course of the pandemic, acts of violence against vulnerable people, especially migrants and asylum seekers, accelerated while xenophobia and racism increased. Muslims are most exposed to these dangerous tendencies fueled by prejudice and ignorance. Those who are primarily responsible for this dangerous course are politicians who turn to populist rhetoric for the sake of votes and marginal segments who legitimize hate speech by abusing the freedom of expression. I urgently call on all international organizations to take more concrete steps in the fight against this mentality. I reiterate my call for March 15th, the day of the terrorist attack perpetrated in New Zealand against Muslims, to be declared by the United Nations as International Solidarity Day against Islamophobia. As the second largest international organization after the United Nations, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation has officially recognized this day. The pandemic and the escalating economic crisis associated with it also have negative effects on sustainable development and on the 2030 goals. Developing countries and countries with low income are more affected by this crisis. In fact, what happened during the pandemic has shown us that sustainable development goals can be an important guide in combating all kinds of global crisis. We should also use the transformative power of digitalization in preparing economic prescriptions to survive the crisis. We support the United Nations Secretary General's roadmap for digital cooperation. We also set the theme of the first Antalya Diplomacy Forum, which we have designed to address global and regional issues, as diplomacy in the digital age. We also host the United Nations Technology Bank for the least developed countries. Being the easternmost European and the westernmost Asian increases Turkey's specific weight in all areas. With our Asia New initiative, we will give our relations a new dynamism in our current time when the pendulum of history is shifting again towards Asia. We have also gained significant momentum in our relations with Africa, with which we have humanitarian and historical ties connecting our close geographies. We plan to implement projects aimed at strengthening Africa's capacity at the third Turkey-African Union Partnership Summit that we intend to hold in Turkey next year. As I conclude my remarks, I would like to say that our strong support for multilateralism will continue during the sensitive period we are passing through. We must, of course, keep our distance from the pandemic, but we must also close ranks in our joint struggle and cooperation against all the challenges that threaten the international community. We will continue our efforts to transform Istanbul, one of the most prominent cities in the world throughout history, into a regional hub of the United Nations. I wish success in the 75th General Assembly's works. I greet you with respect on behalf of myself and my nation. I wish you the best of health.